conservative commentator Carrie Sheffield and also Matt Bennett, former deputy assistant to the president during the Clinton administration. He's currently the co-founder and senior vice president of public affairs for Third Way. To both of you, welcome as we jump into this, starting with Carrie. Does that concept that we just heard that the president could be permanently transforming what it means to be president concern you from this point on?
Well, I think that every single president puts his or her mark on the presidency, so it will be shaped in his or her image going forward, depending on who will be after President Trump. But in terms of being authentic, I think that Trump has redefined what it means to speak directly to the people, to speak directly to the people who elected him, to just speak directly to American citizens about the policies that matter. So in that respect, I think 2017 has been a good year. It's a year where, the mainstream media has been, been held accountable for trying to act as the gatekeeper and to, I think, distract people from substantive policies, like great action the president has taken on issues like tax reform, internet freedom, defeating ISIS. So I'd rather focus on policy and substance, and I think that the president is able to do that by using social media very effectively.
All right, Matt, when you hear, I know there's a little chuckle right there in using social media effectively in saying that 2017 was great in the view of Carrie. There was a little chuckle there.
Yeah, look, I think Peter Baker's right about one thing, that Trump is having an enormous impact on the presidency. I think it's obviously very negative. Some things aren't going to be repeated with our next president, God willing. We're not going to have the grifting of, enriching himself and his family. We're not going to have the pathological need for affirmation from everyone, including foreign leaders. I don't know whether we'll have the indiscipline that we've seen in every aspect of his life, including online. What I really worry about, though, is he has set the bar so unbelievably low for lying from himself and from his staff that I worry even a Democrat will get in and say, well, why should we unilaterally disarm by telling the truth? Trump just spent 4 years lying to us multiple times a day.
Well, with that, Carrie, I want to ask you, when it comes to this New York Times article that goes on to say when it comes to the president and what it will lay forward for the next president, that the next president may feel compelled to be more interactive with the public, even as he or she feels less compelled to be more interactive or less compelled to release tax returns, I should say, or White House entry logs because Mr. Trump refused to. The next president may feel more emboldened to take on entrenched interests or less worried about stretching the truth. So should Republicans be worried about these things becoming new norms? And if so, do they have the responsibility to do something about it, Carrie?
Well, I mean, there's no question that Trump completely disrupted the Republican establishment. And I think that he was a reflection of a lot of disconnect that happened between people who were elite, well-educated, wealthy conservatives and the working class, blue-collar conservatives. And Trump is really kind of straddling that divide. And so it's up to the conservative, quote-unquote, establishment to understand how can they connect with people who are the grassroots foot soldiers who they've been neglecting for the last 50 years. So if the establishment conservatives are upset about the way Trump has been disrupting norms, then maybe we need to think about, how did the norms, so the good norms, the norms that we want to hold people accountable, these are all things we want to keep in place going forward. But we have to look at the big picture to see all the ways that Trump embodies a lot of the failures of the conservatives, to speak directly and to understand the concerns that the grassroots conservatives had.
Well, we have many on the right when it comes to the president and executive action. So many on the right will say they have President Obama to blame when it comes to that in setting that up for the president here. So would you say that the president may bear some of that responsibility? Matt, is that fair to say?
Well, I do think that Carrie's right, that every president kind of changes the presidency in certain ways. And there has been a move towards executive authority that Obama was part of. There's no doubt about that. I think one thing that Trump has done that's been quite a radical break in this regard is the complete reversal of virtually every single thing that his predecessor touched. You always see some sort of reconsideration in the first year of a presidency when the parties change, but his has been wholesale, and it's been very destructive in a lot of ways, including environmental protection and other things. And my hope is that that'll be turned around by the next president.
Yeah, Carrie, we've got one more day left in this year, and in 2018, I should say, looking ahead. What are your predictions, Carrie? What do you see?
Well, my hope is that I will see in 2018 a focus on substance, a focus on policy. I like to see a lot of this noise behind us. I'm glad to see Inspector Mueller. It appears that he will be wrapping up his investigation. He has made arrests, he's made indictments, and these are all good things to hold people accountable for actions that were happening either after the campaign or happened before affiliation with Trump. So I think that that's part of why the president feels very confident when he gave that interview with the New York Times to say, you know, the people who were in my orbit have been held accountable. So I'd like to see this wrapped up. I'd like to focus on issues like welfare reform, issues like criminal justice reform, issues like healthcare reform. So that's my hope for 2018.
And Matt, your predictions, what are you watching? What are you going to expect to see?
I'd like to see more bipartisanship, but my expectation is that it's going to be worse than 2017. I think the Mueller investigation may wrap up in 2018. It may not, but it's certainly going to rattle the White House in ways that make them, and particularly Trump, even more reactive. I think it could be an even nastier year than the one we just survived.
We will find out soon enough. Matt Sheffield and Carrie Sheffield, pardon me, and Matt Bennett, thank you.
Thank you.
Next.